So today's video is going to be all about gardening in the urban environment, not the suburb environment. I live in the suburbs. There's my garden back there. But this video is about how do you grow food, how to be more self-reliant if you're living in a truly urban environment. If you're in a city, what will grow well, what won't grow, what will grow in the sun, what will grow in the shade. That's what this video is about. I'm taking a trip to downtown Johnson City here in Tennessee and talking to the owner of Lotus Farm and Urban Gardening. And he's a plethora of great knowledge. I will put a link in the description below to his store, to his website. It's amazing what you can do in your back patio or in your windowsill. So let's go ahead and get to it. I'm here with Andy Thulis from Lotus Urban Farming and Gardening. Okay, and I'm going to let Andy explain what Lotus stands for because it's pretty cool, and that's what this video is all about.
Lotus stands for living only through urban sustainability.
So now that you know what that stands for, now we're going to get into the heart and potatoes, or meat and potatoes of this video, and talk about sustainability in an urban environment. Just because everything is costing so much more money, he's even keeping his prices down on the fertilizer and dirt that he sells, because we're in trouble here in this country. And even if we weren't, with the way our supply chain is going, our soil is dying in this country because all the junk they put in our fertilizers. And this is a good way to supplement what you have to buy at the store. And it might get to a point where you just might be eating off of your back patio. So I want to go over a couple of things that will work on your patio without much sunlight, and if you have a lot of sunlight and room, other things you can grow. And we're going to leave that to the expert. He's the owner of this store, and he can tell you what will work good in a shadowy environment that doesn't get a whole lot of sunlight, maybe 4 or 5 hours of sun. What would you tell people to grow?
Sure, I would stick with leafy greens, lettuce, spinach, arugula. A lot of those leafy greens don't require near as much full sunlight as a tomato or a pepper would require. So I'd encourage you to check out some of those leafy greens. It's something you can grow year long too. There's varieties that can withstand the heat in the summer seasons. There are varieties that you can grow all winter long. Lettuce, leafy greens, spinach, arugula loves the cool weather. With some proper coverage in the deep winter, you can keep it growing year round.
So in that leafy greens, would that include like a cabbage? Or I know they're a little different with the soil.
Yeah, the cabbage is going to have more nutritional requirements than leafy greens, and you could probably argue that it would take more sunlight,
okay,
absolutely, to get that big head of cabbage that we're looking for.
Okay, so there's some things that you can grow on your back patio. What about herbs? Because I know people, and we've done it before. Sure. We weren't super successful, but herbs in your windowsills.
It depends on the herbs that you're looking to grow. Things like basil requires a lot of highlight. Okay. You need a lot of light for basil. To get the sufficient basil you're really looking for. But you could give it a try if you got a shadier environment. Cilantro, parsley, but yeah, things like basil and dill, you want to get full light on those plants.
But the cilantro, which goes pretty much good with anything, you can throw it in, at least in my opinion. So, well, that's good to know. So we covered what you can have in the shade, and let's talk about if you have a back patio that gets sunlight, or a little porch area that you can grow in the summertime with lots of sun.
If you got lots of sun, you're in luck. Crops like tomatoes, peppers, broccoli, melons, all require a lot of light. The more light you can give them, the better. Couple that light with sufficient fertilization and proper care and management, and you can yield yourself a bumper crop. We want to make sure that all the proper environmental conditions are covered. Light, water, nutrition. I would go with organic amendments to feed your crops. If you can keep a living soil going, much like nature has out in the wild, then the plants are capable of handling the chemistry of the nutritional uptake themselves. Yeah. The ecology is at work making it work.
So there's the things you can do. So what about, I've been seeing videos on potatoes in a 5-gallon bucket. Does that work really?
It does work. I think you need a little bit more room than
In
maybe a
5 gallon?
5-gallon bucket.
Okay.
Yeah, but the idea is the potatoes grow up, you put some more soil on, it continues to grow up, you add more and more. I've seen it done on a larger scale.
Like a keg bucket?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So
Yep.
that's something you can do. And again, you know, as far as we go on the self-reliance and preparedness part of things, you know, potatoes are cheap calories, cheap carbohydrates, not the best thing in the world. If you're diabetic, it's going to spike your blood sugar, but if you need potatoes, that's something you can definitely grow. Let me cut in real quick because I know this. Our growing regions are different, and depending on where you live, I would highly suggest you find out what region you're in. I'll put a link in the description below to where you can find out where your links are, or your regions, because every place is different. And we're up here in the mountains or the hills of the Appalachian Mountains. We're at a little bit of altitude, but we get this real funky weather here. Real quick on the tomatoes.
Sure.
Something I haven't done personally, but we're thinking about doing, and maybe your expert advice. So I've been seeing people put the stakes and they're letting the tomatoes go vertically, vice growing out on the cages. So I guess if you're in an apartment complex or a condo, limited room, that would maybe be better. What do you think about that?
You may, if you have limited environment, you want to wrangle those tomatoes in because they can get a bit unruly if they're not managed. You can cage them. You can build different trellis systems. If you're out in the field or out in your backyard, you can put T-posts into the ground and run twine between them, or equip the tops with PVC tubing that you can run lines down and get them to kind of climb up.
Okay.
But they've got to be managed. Most tomatoes produce what are called suckers, that are these competing vine-like stems that will emerge up the plant along every branch arm. It'll come up at a 45-degree angle.
Can you nip those?
You got to nip them, because if you don't, it has a mind of its own. It will take off. It will head in a different direction.
And I've had that problem personally. I mean, with the COVID last year, I wasn't taking care of my tomatoes too well, and it didn't turn out too good for us. Real quick, before we start looking at the dirt that you're going to be using, I want Andy to talk about this system he has behind us. It's something you can do indoors. So
with a proper grow light, you can garden year round. But you need a proper grow light. We want to provide optimal lighting conditions to the crops that we're rearing. If you're looking at doing things like leafy greens, they don't require as much intensity as a sunflower or a tomato would, or a hemp plant. They require a lot more light. Fortunately, lighting technology has come a long way from the metal halide and high pressure sodium systems that we've relied on for so long. There's high-end LED options on the market these days that deliver sufficient full spectrum light with energy savings, with just an overall better photosynthetic response for the plants to kind of capitalize on.
And how much does something like this cost?
It will range anywhere from a couple $100 to over $1,000, just depending on how much firepower you're looking to provide.
Gotcha. And like this setup right here, what's the energy? What do you think it would cost to run this for a winter if you want to grow in a winter time?
It may cost you an additional $30 to $40 a month.
Worth it.
This is an 850 watts LED grow light. That's a lot of wattage for an LED light, but it can cover more than a lower wattage LED light can, up to a 5x5 footprint. And you can rear flower bearing and fruiting crops under that kind of light.
Wow, that's cool. We're probably going to get one of these this winter. That's the okay. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the dirt.
Okay. Coco Loco from Fox Farm is one of my favorite soils. It is comprised of coconut coir, which is an excellent option. I prefer it over peat. Peat moss, when it dries out, it becomes hydrophobic and will begin to repel water. It tends to be a little more acidic. Coconut coir is more sustainable. Coconut coir holds more water than peat moss does. Coconut coir holds more air than peat moss does. Coconut coir is comprised of 40% magnesium. So it is a powerhouse medium. The Coco Loco has mixed everything together for you: compost, coconut coir, perlite for adequate aeration. Air in the root zone is arguably one of the most important elemental factors to manage in the root zone. We want air exchange. We want it to be able to hold water. The other great thing about Coco Loco and most of the Fox Farm soils, it is a living soil in the truest sense. It is inoculated with beneficial mycorrhizal fungi that forms a symbiotic relationship with the roots of the plants, increasing water absorption, immunity, nutrient uptake. It mines the soil for resources and trades that to the plant for carbohydrates. They've got a symbiotic relationship working. That's what makes it alive. There's that fungi in there. There's all kinds of bacteria in there. And that is what the plant is looking for. That is what the roots are connecting with. As soon as that root tip emerges from your little seedling, the first thing it's doing is connecting with the beneficial biology that surrounds it, that supports it. And that's what I like about having an organic living soil, is getting that biology in there so nature can begin working together in cooperation with itself. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, so if you're going to start from seed, would you seed in this or use something else to start your seed in?
You can certainly start seeding this.
Okay. And then just let her rip.
Let her rip,
out.
absolutely.
Okay, cool.
I'd fertilize, I'd get some minerals into that soil. Fertility is critical. You want to make sure you've got fertilizers in your soil, preferably they're organic. That way you leave the work of the chemistry to the plants themselves. The resources just stay into the soil until the plants are ready to pull them up. If you're using salt-based nutrients like you see from Miracle-Gro, other vendors, the plants have no say in the uptake of those minerals, and so you can get burning. The free will is removed for the plants. If you keep it organic, if you build your fertility into the soil, it's like a savings account for the plant that the plant can draw from when it wants to.
Go ahead. Okay.
So Dirtcraft Organics is based out of Marshall, North Carolina. It's a local vendor. We want to support our local vendors. It is a certified organic potting soil derived primarily from coconut coir compost, perlite. They've got about 5 weeks of nutrition built into this, derived from feather meal, bone meal, all kinds of different organic amendments built in. The Coast of Maine Stonington blend is perhaps my favorite soil. It is an excellent organic mix with some of the finest ingredients I've seen in a soil. Organic lobster compost, worm castings, fish bone meal, kelp. It's got the beneficial mycorrhizae in there. What's so special about Coast of Maine, they give their compost adequate time to fully break down into humus. The other great component of their compost is it's derived from lobster shells, crab shells, shrimp shells. So that gives it a lot of calcium. I couldn't believe some of the growth that I've seen happen out of this soil here. That calcium is critical to plant health. Calcium is the most important mineral for plant health. When you see that NPK on fertilizers, it really should include calcium. The NPK is just a thumbnail of a larger picture of what these plants need.
You want to tell them what NPK is?
NPK stands for nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. It's those three numbers you typically see on the front of a fertilizer on the packaging there. It is a snapshot at what it contains. It does not represent the totality of what plants need.
So I hope you found this video informative, educational. It gives you a little motivation to maybe grow some lettuce on your back patio or spinach, tomatoes, bell peppers, whatever the case may be. Be a little more self-reliant. Be able to walk out on your back patio or in your front patio and grab a tomato or a bell pepper to be more self-reliant. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. If you do at the current time use your back patio or front porch for urban gardening, please leave a comment below and let me know exactly what you're doing. Anything I can share with people, I'm trying to do. Again, there is a link in the description below to Andy's store. The guy is amazing. He just loves gardening. He knows what he's talking about. I pick his brain and it is so helpful. So please like and share this video with your friends. And as I always say, Be prepared, not scared. AV Prepping out.